Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review of Captain America Iron Man issue 2. And I overall really enjoyed this issue, mainly because I really think it does a very good job of getting a good kind of relationship going between Tony and Steve. That is the biggest kind of strength for this. The weakness, however, is mainly still with Veronica. But the thing is, it seems like they're more using her as a catalyst for other kind of things that we get kind of introduced in this issue. As we start off, we see that the Paladins are just pretty much giving Tony and Steve a kind of lowdown of what's going on. And I do like that the 50 State Initiative is a kind of key point here, and that we get Steve and Tony, who were pivotal with the whole Civil War thing, talking about this initiative as well. It's one of those big kind of things that, like, yeah, it kind of happened, but not a lot of like introspection goes into it very often, and I do like it when they kind of like drill into it. Not that they like forget about it. It's just like sometimes it's popped up for story purposes and not like as explored as it could be. Where it's kind of a big kind of part of Tony and Steve's relationship that they kind of like bring up here and actually talk about. So we see that they're pretty much like, okay, 51. We understand he's got like seismic power, some telepathy, and then his suit's able to do certain things. And they're like, he just kind of went off for some reason, and he's working potentially to get this Myrmidon thing going on. And I was a little bit kind of confused because, granted, Steve was incarcerated in the Myrmidon. I'm like, what the fuck's this? It's like almost kind of somewhat similar to like a destroyer armor kind of thing, except it's a tech thing. Alien kind of stuff. It's like, all right. Now the Paladins are like, listen, we sucked. We weren't up to our standards, but we need to deal with this, and we can deal with this alone. Steve and Tony are like, yeah, we're not gonna let them deal with that alone. Let's see. Then we get Veronica just pontificating and just talking about herself. It's like, okay, she's just gonna be this kind of asshole person, huh? Like comparing herself with like Zemo and all that, and that her like biggest kind of thing is that maybe I want a friend. I'm like, yeah, but I can kind of see why you don't have any friends, because you're kind of an asshole. Mm-hmm. And she pretty much just talks at 51, the alien kind of dude, because we can't understand what he's saying. It's like, all right, cool. They pretty much get into this kind of like old kind of shield bunker kind of place. It's like, all right, cool. Let's kind of get this tech, and we see that later on that there's a lot of kind of interesting kind of things in there. Well, Steve and Tony are then pretty much at Tony's pad in New York, and I actually really like this kind of scene as they're kind of talking with each other, and Steve's like, I kind of like that you're in a place that isn't like all glass and whatnot. He's like, yeah, I'm trying to be a little bit less me. I got rebooted and everything, and I'm trying to do better. And Steve's kind of position is like, yeah, the world pretty much tries to kind of like slot you wherever, just try and be the best version of you that you can be. And then we get the whole kind of Yoda quote of do or do not, there is no try. And then Steve's like, I never really agreed with that with the green puppet. I think trying is like one of the biggest kind of things that you can do. Let's see here. He's like, trying is what it's all about. And I'm like, you know what? I like that. It's a weird thing. Steve Rogers is like one of those characters that I really like and really look up to, and I also do the same thing with Yoda. And he's got some interest. I do like that kind of different kind of aspect of it because I kind of tend to be more with Steve on that. And but I can understand why Yoda would be like the do or do not kind of thing. But it's kind of cool because like, huh, okay. They of course then get uh, the whole kind of thing that Veronica and her group of Hydra people pretty much gone into this kind of shield place. They're like, all right, cool, let's suit up and get this done. And then we see that they get there. The Paladins are pretty much trying to break in. Tony's tech is able to pretty much see what's kind of already gone on. It's already been infiltrated and everything. And then Steve's kind of like remarking upon Tony's kind of mood, and it's pretty much related to the 50 State Initiative and all that. And that's when they start kind of pretty much talking about it. And it's really kind of cool to see their perspectives on it, because we see that Tony's like, all right, yeah, we got all these kind of hero rosters for all the states and everything, but then Steve brings up the actually really good argument that the whole thing about being a hero is to like go and help people, and that usually involves fighting villains. You can't station a hero group in some place where nothing's really happening and just tell them to wait. It's not really an effective use of resources. Like, that's a pretty interesting kind of thing. And yeah, Tony's like, yeah, nobody wants to be in Ohio. But then Steve's like, yeah, I've been to Ohio and kind of liked it. And Steve still does bring up that it's still a good idea. He's only against it with like that it being a government-sponsored aspect, but like a whole roster of Avengers that can cover the entire country. That's what he really kind of liked about the idea. Then they kind of are infiltrating and taking down bad guys as Tony is kind of like putting himself down. And a really kind of cool aspect that I really like is that Steve's like, I don't like that you do that, that you keep putting yourself down. And he brings up how all these people around the world can pretty much label him in certain things. And like Steve's like, I don't know those ones at all for that. Like in regards to Tony and people talking about Tony like that. He only knows him as Tony, and that's a really kind of cool aspect that I really like. I really like how it's kind of like paneled out, and you're like able to go through it. And he's like, yeah, I just know you as Tony. And it of course starts freaking Tony out. It's like, why are you being nice? And you're being weird. And he's like, I'm your friend. You know? Then we see that Veronica is just making sure that 51 wants whatever these are pretty much given, but she's found all this kind of tech from like Spider-Man villains and everything. I'm like, okay, this is going to be a little bit weird, but she's like, all right, cool, just take all that shit, that's cool. But Steve and Tony pop up, and she's pretty much like, yeah, I got all this shit, while 51 steps out, and he's got on the Hydra Supreme armor. I was like, oh, all right, I kind of want to know what's going on with that. And it's, Veronica's got like octopus arms, the scorpion stinger, a glider, and everything. I'm like, that's probably gonna overload the shit out of her, and that's not wrong. It's funny because then also before the fighting starts, 51's like, yeah, I'm done, I'm out, I got my shit, and then just leaves. Like, huh, okay. Now, granted, she kind of like whoops on Tony for a little bit before, of course, the neural interface for all this stuff is kind of like going whack. Now, with all those kind of things, that kind of makes sense. I mean, the neural interfaces for those kind of things are kind of buggy to begin with because of what went on with certain Spider-Man villains. Trying to like tap all that stuff at once, that's not the best of ideas. But of course, she gets it back up, and then the Paladins pretty much come in and kind of get her into a kind of compromised position. But she then, of course, is able to kind of get out of it, but then the neural interface kind of walks with her again. And then one of the Paladins, which shows one of the kind of cool scenes that I like tries to shoot at her, and Steve kind of, like, protects her from it. It's like, yeah, that's not cool, man. Like, she's pretty much out of commission. You can just pretty much, like, trap her and you're good. Then, of course, she's pretty much milking the moment to pretty much get the stuff back. But then Steve's like, yeah, no, you're under arrest. So that's pretty much where that ends with Veronica. Then we see that we're 8 miles above Minneapolis. The Myrmidon gets, like, activated. And then we see that the Overseer is part of its things, which is kind of interesting that it's kind of MODOK colored. I'm not really that well versed with the Myrmidon robot thing and the Overseer, even though they're kind of linked with what was going on with, like, Tony at one point. And then, of course, they also brought up that, let's see, it was, like, in S.H.I.E.L.D. custody until, like, the Hydra Supreme event thing was going on with Secret Empire. So, we'll kind of have to see how this goes on. I really like the aspects of Tony and Steve just actually interacting, talking about events, trying to help and support each other, and then talking about, like, other kind of events, like the whole 50-state initiative, and seeing where they are now that they've had years to kind of look into it. Those are the really strong aspects. They even did a little bit of stuff with the Paladins that I'm like, okay, it's interesting to see that they know that this isn't up to the standards that they usually like to do, and that they do a little bit too loose, especially when they were trying to like deal with Veronica. I'm kind of disappointed with Veronica at the moment because, granted, I don't mind villains being assholes, but sometimes it just gets to a point where you're like, all right, she's definitely starting to annoy me, and then she just utilizes all these Spider-Man villain tech things without actually doing anything with them herself, except for the neural interface kind of like fucking her over at certain battle points. I'm like, okay. Now, granted, I'm still not that well versed with her, so I kind of wanted her to do her own kind of thing, but it seems like she's, again, what I talked about in the beginning is kind of a catalyst to this whole Myrmidon overseer kind of thing, so we'll have to see how that kind of works out. So those are my opinions on the issue. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also, like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.